Hello. Our Parshat Vayechi, is a Parsha filled with blessings. Indeed, it is filled with blessings upon blessings, chock full of nuts of blessings, blessings which could not have been imagined and had remained unforeseen only a decade or so before. But before we get into the actual blessings, let us review the highlights of our Parsha. Our Parsha finds our old and tired father Jacob upon his deathbed. To say that Jacob had a tough life would be an understatement. In his lifetime, he had to survive a murderous brother, an abusive father-in-law, the loss of the love of his life, his beloved Rachel, at a young age while in childbirth. And finally, and most cruelly, a 22-year-long tragedy in which his favorite son, Yosef, was believed by him to be dead and most likely unburied. But then, in his old age, when he must have felt and believed that his entire life was an abject disaster, a miracle happened. Not only was his beloved son Yosef alive and well, not only did he achieve incredibly amazing accomplishments, he was the viceroy of a world power. Despite all temptations and challenges to his faith, not to mention integrity as a moral human being, his son, Joseph, retained his religious beliefs, continued to practice all that he had learned at the foot of his father. And much more than that, he managed to transmit the Torah of Jacob to his own two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, with aplomb. After the great reunion with Joseph, Yaakov was at peace. He experienced 17 quiet years where he continued to guide his children and his grandchildren in this new land called Egypt. And then, as the years went by, when Yaakov felt that his end was near, he wanted, nay, he needed to bless all his children before his death. Amazingly, he gave his first 3 children blessings, and they didn't seem to be blessings at all. In fact, to the contrary, he rebuked them. But that doesn't pose too much difficulty, because as any good parent knows, sometimes a rebuke properly said and properly received with a good spirit is ultimately a blessing, both for the parent and the child. But what I'd like to concentrate and focus our attention on is a blessing which stands out amongst the others, and it is the blessing which is bequeathed to Judah, the 4th son. Let's take a closer look. The bracha begins with the following words: Yehuda ata yaducha achecha, Judah, your brothers shall be grateful to you. And we ask, grateful? Grateful for what? Why should they be grateful to Judah? Indeed, Rashi points out that after having witnessed the rebuke of his older brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, Yehuda was slowly trying to escape the room, for he was certain that he would be next in line for a very sharp rebuke. After all, his affair with Tamar was certainly worthy of a fiery chastisement. But to Judah and everybody else's surprise, Jacob gave him blessings overflowing, even asserting that the other brothers needed to show deep, deep gratitude toward him. So what's this all about? There is a medrash that makes the following comment on the aforementioned problem. Yehuda, it says, Judah, ata hodeta b'ma'aseh Tamar, yoducha achecha liyot aleha melech. Judah, because you admitted your guilt in the affair of Tamar, your brother should therefore be grateful to you and appoint you their king. What's going on here? My beloved uncle, who I love to quote, Rabbi Lam, Zichrono Livracha, offered the following suggestion. He said that there's a major difference between being thankful to someone and being grateful. Thankfulness is basically the courteous expression of recognition for a convenience rendered. You did me a favor, you did my shopping, thank you. Gratitude, on the other hand, is a sentiment which strikes much more deeply into the soul of he who is grateful. Thankfulness is touching, but gratitude is inspiring. In short, gratitude involves a confession of inadequacy or dependency. You have done something for me that I could never have possibly done for myself. It's a confession which comes from deep humility. I am lacking, incompetent, powerless. You have given me power, which I could not have mustered on my own. So the term yoducha in Jacob's blessings means not merely thankfulness, but rather gratitude. And Judah had showed his brothers something new. He showed them what the true meaning of gratitude is, and that alone was sufficient reason for them to crown him their king. Let me explain. In the story of Judah and Tamar, Judah was confronted with the knowledge that Tamar, his daughter-in-law, had strayed and became pregnant. Judah could have kept silent, witnessing the death of Tamar, and indeed playing a role in her death as chief justice in the case, without anyone in the world suspecting that she was carrying his child. Instead of keeping quiet, he was willing to risk total ruination, public humiliation and scandal, and admit to one and all that he was the one responsible for Tamar's pregnancy. But even more than that, he went a step further. He expressed gratitude to Tamar for not pointing out his foibles in public. She was willing to go to the fiery furnace, and she taught him how to be a man quietly. He must man up to his own mistakes. It was that courageous display of consummate valor of both Tamar and Yehuda, that expression of true gratitude that moved Yaakov, upon hearing the story and realizing what happened, to announce to the world that Judah was indeed entitled to reign as king over his brothers, for he taught them a valuable lesson. He taught them what it means to be a king. A very great religious principle lies in this idea. When we all wake up each morning while still semi-slumbering on our beds, we are taught as children to recite Moda'ani, or Moidiani, as my grandmother used to say. I think it means more than just, thank you, God, for allowing me to wake up, but rather, I am grateful to you, O God, that you have returned my conscious soul to me with great mercy. Even though I am not deserving, you still put your faith in me. It is the simple acknowledgement that without God, there is no life. It is a confession that ultimately man is not independent, but rather very dependent. Without God's continued faith in us, our lives would ultimately remain without meaning and purpose. It is an expression of the ultimate gratitude. I'll share a humorous anecdote. I had a Rebbe in high school who used to tell us that whenever he would be pulled over by a cop for speeding, which for him seemed to occur with some frequency, the guy would write him a ticket, and he always made sure to tell the officer with great sincerity, thank you. Thank you for giving me the ticket. I deserved it. I'm not sure what the policeman made out of that, but it was his way of taking responsibility and declaiming gratitude in the face of a situation where he was obviously wrong. That takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of character to do that. It's a form of Moda'ani. Moda'ani is the ultimate expression of gratitude to our God, and we in turn are grateful to Judah, whose very name means gratitude, for teaching us this important lesson, and for ultimately lending his name, Judah, Jew, to the rest of us. Shabbat Shalom.